Hey everyone, welcome to English in Fluency, the place where you do not just learn English, but you live it, feel it, and truly understand it. I am your host, Alex, and I am so incredibly happy to have you here with me today for something very special. Today, we are going to tackle one of the biggest problems language learners face, which is losing focus. We have all been there. You are listening to a podcast or a story, and for the first minute, everything is perfect. You understand every word. But then, suddenly, your mind flies away. You start thinking about what to cook for dinner, or you remember an email you forgot to send, and by the time you come back to the audio, you have missed the most important part. Does that sound familiar? If it does, do not worry, because you are normal. However, today we are going to fix that. We are going to practice active engagement. We are going to listen to a long, immersive mystery story, but I will be right here with you, guiding you, asking you questions, and making sure your brain stays awake from the very first second to the very last. So, take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's begin our journey. Our story today is about a young man named Leo. Leo is a professional restorer, which means his job is to fix old, broken things and make them look new again. He loves history, but he has a problem. Leo gets distracted very easily. He is very talented, but he often forgets where he put his tools, or he stops working to look out the window at a bird. This week, Leo has received a very important assignment. He must travel to a small, sleepy village called Oakhaven to fix a giant clock in the town square that has not worked for 50 years. The townspeople say the clock is special, perhaps even magical, but nobody knows why it stopped. Listen carefully now as we join Leo on the train ride to Oakhaven. The train rattled and shook as it moved through the green countryside. Leo sat by the window, watching the trees pass by in a blur of green and brown. He looked at his watch. It was already 2 o'clock in the afternoon. He sighed and opened his backpack to check his equipment one more time. He had his screwdrivers, his small hammers, and his magnifying glass. He felt nervous. This was the biggest job of his career. If he could fix the Oakhaven clock, he would be famous in his company. But if he failed, he might lose his job. Suddenly, the train slowed down. A loud voice came over the speaker saying that the next stop was Oakhaven. Leo grabbed his heavy bag and stood up. His heart was beating fast. He stepped off the train onto the old wooden platform. The air in Oakhaven smelled different. It smelled like pine trees and rain. It was quiet, very quiet. There were no cars, only the sound of the wind blowing through the leaves. Now, pause for a second and think about what you just heard. I want you to check your focus. Did you catch the details? I mentioned what Leo had in his backpack. Can you remember the 3 items? If you are actively listening, your brain should have made a picture of them. He had screwdrivers, small hammers, and a magnifying glass. If you missed that, do not worry. Just tell yourself that for the next section, you will paint a picture in your mind. Visualization is the key to focus. When you hear a word, see the object. Let's go back to Leo. Leo walked into the town square. It was a beautiful place with cobblestone streets and small cottages with smoking chimneys. In the center of the square stood the clock tower. It was huge. It was made of dark gray stone and rose high into the sky, higher than any other building. But the face of the clock was sad. The hands of the clock were stuck at 12 minutes past 3. They were rusted and covered in dust. A few pigeons were sitting on the numbers. Leo approached the large wooden door at the base of the tower. It was locked. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a heavy iron key that the town mayor had mailed to him. He put the key in the lock and turned it. With a loud groan, the door opened. Inside, it was dark and dusty. It smelled of old oil and metal. There was a spiral staircase going up, and everywhere Leo looked, there were gears and cogs scattered on the floor. It looked like a puzzle that someone had thrown on the ground. Leo put his bag down on a dusty table. He needed to make a plan. He took out his notebook. He wrote down his first task, which was to inspect the main mechanism. He climbed the stairs, his footsteps echoing in the silence. 1, 2, 3 steps. He counted them to stay calm. When he reached the top, he saw the back of the clock face. It was an incredible machine of brass and iron, but something was wrong. A large piece was missing. Right in the center, where the main gear should be, there was only a hole. Leo scratched his head. He looked around the room. In the corner, under a pile of old newspapers, he saw a small wooden box. It was made of dark oak and had strange symbols carved into the lid. Leo felt a shiver go down his spine. He walked over to the box and picked it up. It was heavy. He shook it, and something rattled inside. Let's stop here for a moment of practice. This is a great opportunity to predict what will happen next. Prediction is a powerful tool for B1 learners to stay engaged. When you predict, your brain wakes up because it wants to know if you are right or wrong. So, ask yourself, what is inside the box? Is it the missing gear? Is it a letter? Is it a key? Hold that guess in your mind. Also, notice the atmosphere I am describing. I used words like dark, dusty, silence, and shiver. These words create a mood of mystery. When you listen to English, try to feel the mood. Is it happy? Is it scary? This helps you understand the context even if you do not know every single word. Now, let's see if your prediction about the box is correct. Leo carefully opened the lid of the wooden box. It was not locked. Inside, sitting on a cushion of red velvet, was not a gear, and it was not a key. It was a small leather journal. Leo was surprised. He picked up the book. The leather was cracked and old. On the first page, there was handwriting in faded black ink. Leo squinted his eyes to read the cursive writing. It said, "To the one who tries to fix time, beware. The clock is not broken. It is waiting." Leo frowned. What did that mean? He turned the page. The next page was a drawing of the clock tower, but in the drawing, the clock was not showing time. Instead of numbers, there were letters on the clock face. Leo looked up at the real clock mechanism. He realized that this was not just a repair job. This was a mystery. The previous clockmaker, a man named Elias Thorne, had left this journal. Leo sat down on the floor and began to read. Elias wrote that he stopped the clock 50 years ago on purpose because he wanted to hide something inside the tower, something that could only be found when the right person arrived. Leo felt a mix of excitement and fear. He loved puzzles, but he was here to do a job. The mayor wanted the clock fixed by Friday for the town festival. Today was Tuesday. He had 3 days. If he wasted time playing detective, he might not finish the repair. But if the clock was not actually broken, but waiting, as the book said, then standard repairs would not work. He had to follow the clues. He looked at the drawing in the book again. Under the drawing of the clock face with letters, there was a riddle. It read, "I have a face, but no eyes. I have hands, but no arms. Speak my name, and I will open. Leo smiled. He knew this riddle. It was a classic. The answer, of course, was a clock. But that seemed too simple. He looked around the room. Maybe he had to say the word out loud? He stood up, cleared his throat, and said, "Clock." Nothing happened. The room remained silent. He felt a bit foolish talking to a machine. He tried again, louder this time. Clock. Still nothing. He looked back at the riddle. Speak my name. Maybe it wasn't the general name. Maybe it was the specific name of the clock. Did the clock have a name? He remembered the mayor's letter. The letter had called the tower the Guardian of Oakhaven. Leo took a deep breath. He looked at the center of the mechanism where the missing gear should be. He said, clearly and firmly, "Guardian." Suddenly, a loud click echoed through the room. Leo jumped back. A small panel in the wall, which Leo had thought was just a stone, popped open. His heart raced. It worked. He walked over to the open panel. Inside was a silver lever. Leo hesitated. Should he pull it? Let's take a quick pause. I want to draw your attention to the verbs I used in that last section. Listening for action verbs helps you follow the sequence of events. Leo sat, read, stood, cleared his throat, and said a word. Then the panel popped open. If you focus on the verbs, you can visualize the movie of the story in your head. Also, notice how Leo's feelings changed. He went from feeling foolish to feeling excited. Tracking the emotions of the character helps you stay connected to the story. If you just listen to the facts, it gets boring. If you listen to the emotions, it becomes a human experience. Now, I want you to decide. If you were Leo, would you pull the lever? It could be dangerous. It could break the clock further. Or it could be the solution. What would you do? Keep that decision in mind as we continue. Leo reached out his hand. His fingers touched the cold metal of the silver lever. He thought about the festival on Friday. He thought about the townspeople waiting for the bell to ring again. He closed his eyes and pulled the lever down. There was a deep rumbling sound, like thunder, but it was coming from inside the walls. The floor beneath his feet began to vibrate. Leo grabbed the table to steady himself. The gears in the center of the room started to turn slowly. Click, clack, click, clack. But they were not moving the clock hands outside. They were moving something else. The wall behind the clock mechanism began to slide open. It was a secret door. Leo stared in amazement. Behind the wall was a small, hidden room. It was filled with shelves, and on the shelves were hundreds of small clocks. There were cuckoo clocks, pocket watches, grandfather clocks, and digital clocks. They were all ticking, but they were all showing different times. The sound was overwhelming. Tick-tock, 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 coming from 100 different directions. Leo walked into the hidden room. In the center of this room stood a pedestal, and on the pedestal was a golden gear. It was the missing piece. Leo laughed with relief. He ran forward to grab it. But just as he was about to touch it, he stopped. There was a piece of paper under the gear. He pulled the paper out gently. It was another note from Elias Thorne. It said, "Do not take the gear until you set the time correctly. If you take it at the wrong moment, the tower will lock forever." Leo froze. Set the time correctly? But which time? He looked at the hundreds of clocks on the shelves. One said 5 o'clock, another said 12:30, another said 9:15. Which one was right? He looked at his own wristwatch. It was 2:45. But was that the time Elias meant? The note said, The right time is not what you see, but what you hear. Leo closed his eyes. He tried to listen. The room was full of noise, ticking, clicking, whirring. It was chaos. How could he hear the right time in all this noise? This is exactly the challenge we face in listening practice, isn't it? There is so much noise, so many words, so many sounds. How do we find the answer? Leo remembered his training. When he restored old clocks, he had to listen to the heartbeat of the machine. He had to ignore the surface noise and find the rhythm. He took a deep breath and focused. He tried to tune out the loud cuckoo clocks. He tried to ignore the fast ticking of the pocket watches. He listened for something deeper. And then he heard it. Underneath all the fast ticking, there was a slow, steady beat. Thump, thump, thump. It sounded like a heartbeat. It was coming from the floor. Leo knelt down and put his ear to the wooden floorboards. The sound was coming from below. He realized that the right time wasn't a number on a dial. It was a rhythm. He had to synchronize the golden gear with this heartbeat. He stood up and looked at the gear. It was spinning very slowly on the pedestal. He had to grab it exactly when the rhythm matched the beat from the floor. He closed his eyes again. Thump. Wait. Thump. Wait. Thump. Now! He reached out and grabbed the golden gear. The room went silent. All the hundreds of clocks stopped ticking at the same time. Leo held his breath. Had he made a mistake? Was the tower going to lock him in? Suddenly, the lights in the room flickered. A soft chime sounded. It was a beautiful, clear note. The golden gear in his hands felt warm. He had done it. He had solved the first part of the puzzle. But the mystery was not over. As he walked back out of the secret room towards the main mechanism to install the gear, he noticed something he had missed before. On the back of the secret door, there was a map. It was a map of Oakhaven, but it looked different. It showed tunnels underneath the town, and right under the clock tower, on the map, there was a red X. Leo realized that fixing the clock was only the beginning. The clock was not just a timekeeper, it was a gate, and he was about to open it. This brings us to a very important point about active listening and focus. Leo succeeded because he filtered out the distractions. He didn't listen to the loudest clocks. He listened for the most important sound. In English, you will often hear sentences that are full of filler words or details that don't matter. Your job is to find the golden gear, the subject, the verb, and the object. Who is doing what? If you can hear that, you can understand anything. Leo found the rhythm. You need to find the rhythm of English. English is a stress-timed language. That means some syllables are long and loud, and some are short and quiet. If you try to listen to every single word with equal importance, you will get tired, just like Leo would have been confused by all the clocks. Focus on the stressed words, the nouns, the verbs, the adjectives. Let the little words like at, to, the, and of slide by quickly. Let's go back to Leo. He now had the golden gear. He walked over to the main machine. He aligned the teeth of the gear with the empty hole in the mechanism. He pushed it in. It fit perfectly. Clunk. He took his screwdriver and tightened the screw in the center. He wiped the sweat from his forehead. Now he had to wind the main spring. He found a large crank handle on the side of the machine. He gripped it with both hands and started to turn. It was heavy. He groaned with effort. 1 turn, 2 turns, 3 turns. The machine began to wake up. The sound was different now. It wasn't just a click. It was a powerful, rhythmic hum. The whole tower seemed to vibrate with energy. Outside, in the square, the pigeons flew away in surprise as the giant hands of the clock jerked forward. The minute hand moved from 12 minutes past 3 to 13 minutes past 3. The clock was alive. Leo smiled. He felt a huge sense of accomplishment. He leaned against the wall to rest. He was thirsty and hungry. He decided to go down to the town and get some food. He deserved a break. He packed his tools back into his bag. He took the journal with him. He wasn't going to leave that behind. He walked down the spiral staircase, locked the heavy wooden door, and stepped out into the fresh air. The sun was setting now, casting long shadows across the square. A few people were stopping to look up at the tower. They were pointing and smiling. They could see the hands moving. An old man walked up to Leo. He had white hair and was wearing a thick wool coat. "You did it," the old man said. "I haven't seen those hands move since I was a boy." Leo smiled politely. "It's not finished yet," Leo said. "I just got it running. I still need to calibrate it." The old man looked at Leo with intense blue eyes. "Be careful, young man," he whispered. "Time is a tricky thing in Oakhaven. Don't let it run away with you." Leo felt a chill, despite the warm evening sun. "What do you mean?" Leo asked. But the old man just turned and walked away, his cane tapping on the cobblestones. Leo watched him go. He touched the journal in his pocket. He remembered the map he saw in the secret room, the tunnels under the town, the red X. He realized that the old man knew something. Leo was hungry, but his curiosity was stronger. He looked at the map in his mind. The entrance to the tunnels was supposed to be near the old library. Leo checked his watch. It was 6 p.m. The library would be closing soon. He had a choice. Go eat dinner and rest, or go to the library and investigate the tunnels immediately. What would you do? This is a moment where focus requires energy. When we are tired, our English listening skills drop. We start to translate in our heads instead of understanding directly. We miss words. Leo is tired, and you might be tired too after listening to this for a while. But we have to push through to the end. Let's follow Leo to the library. He decided to skip dinner. He bought a sandwich from a street vendor and ate it while walking fast. He arrived at the library just as the librarian was flipping the sign from open to closed. "Wait!" Leo called out. He ran up the steps. The librarian, a stern woman with glasses on a chain, looked at him. "We are closed," she said. "Please," Leo said, catching his breath. "I just need to check one thing. It's about the clock tower." The librarian's expression changed. She looked surprised. "The clock tower?" she repeated. "Come in. Quickly." Leo stepped inside. The library was filled with the smell of old paper and wax polish. "I'm Mrs. Higgins," the woman said. "Why are you asking about the tower?" Leo took the journal out of his pocket. "I found this," he said. Mrs. Higgins gasped. She put her hand over her mouth. "Elias's journal," she whispered. "We thought it was lost forever." She looked at Leo with fear in her eyes. "If you found this, then the mechanism is active. And if the mechanism is active, the door to the tunnels is unlocking." Leo nodded. "I saw the map. Where is the entrance?" Mrs. Higgins pointed to a rug in the center of the library floor. "It's right there," she said. "But you must not go down there alone. It is a maze. People get lost and never come back." Leo looked at the rug. He looked at the journal. He looked at Mrs. Higgins. He knew he was at the start of a dangerous adventure. He had fixed the clock, but he had broken the seal on a secret that had been kept for 50 years. "I have to go," Leo said. "The journal says the clock is waiting. I need to know what it is waiting for." He walked towards the rug and pulled it back. Underneath was a trap door with a brass ring. He pulled the ring. The trap door opened into darkness. A cool breeze blew up from the hole. It smelled of damp earth and something else. Something sweet. Like old flowers. "Take this," Mrs. Higgins said. She handed him a flashlight. "And remember, stay focused. The tunnels play tricks on your mind. You will hear things that are not there." Leo took the flashlight. "Thank you," he said. He turned it on and shone the beam into the dark hole. He could see stone steps going down, down, down. He took a deep breath. He was ready. He stepped onto the first step, and the darkness swallowed him. Now, as Leo descends, we must also deepen our focus. We are going deeper, literally. We are going underground. The challenges will get harder, and the mystery will get darker. So, I need you to sharpen your ears. I need you to be ready to catch every detail, every color, and every sound. Are you ready? Let's turn on our flashlights and step into the darkness with Leo. Leo took the first step down the stone stairs. The air was cold, much colder than in the library. He shivered and pulled his jacket tighter around his shoulders. He pointed the flashlight beam ahead. The stairs were narrow and steep. They were cut directly into the earth. The walls were made of rough dirt and stones, and tree roots hung down from the ceiling like twisted fingers. Leo counted his steps. 1, 2, 3, 4. He wanted to keep his mind busy so he wouldn't feel afraid. By the time he reached the bottom, he had counted 50 steps. He was now deep under the town of Oakhaven. He stood on a flat dirt floor. The tunnel stretched out in front of him, disappearing into the blackness. It was silent, but it wasn't a dead silence. It was a waiting silence. Let's pause right there. I want you to practice your visualization skills again. I described the roots hanging from the ceiling. I used a simile, which is a comparison using like or as. I said they were like twisted fingers. Can you see that image in your mind? It makes the tunnel feel scary and alive, doesn't it? When you read or listen to English, look for these comparisons. They add flavor to the language. Also, notice the temperature. It is cold. Imagine that feeling on your skin. Engaging your physical senses helps lock the vocabulary into your memory. Now, let's move forward. Leo started walking. His boots made a crunching sound on the gravel floor. The tunnel was not straight. It curved left, then right, then left again. It felt like a snake. After walking for about 10 minutes, Leo stopped. The tunnel had split into two. There was a path to the left and a path to the right. Leo shone his light down the left path. It looked dry and dusty. Then he shone his light down the right path. The floor was wet, and he could hear the faint sound of dripping water. Drip, drip, drip. Which way should he go? He didn't have a map for this part. The map in the clock tower only showed the entrance, not the maze itself. He pulled the journal out of his pocket. He flipped through the pages frantically. He found a page with a hastily drawn sketch of a fork in a tunnel. Under the sketch, Elias Thorne had written a strange sentence: "Follow the tears of the earth." Think about that phrase, the tears of the earth. What could that mean? In English, we often use poetic language to describe simple things. Tears are wet. Tears fall like drops. What acts like tears underground? Water. The water dripping from the ceiling represents the tears. So, the clue was telling Leo to follow the water. This is a great example of solving a riddle by thinking about the characteristics of words. If Leo goes to the dry tunnel, he is lost. If he goes to the wet tunnel, he is safe. Let's see if he figures it out. Leo stared at the two paths. "Tears of the earth," he whispered. He looked at the puddle of water on the right path. He smiled. "It's the water," he said. "I need to go right." He stepped into the right tunnel. The air became damp and heavy. The smell of sweet flowers, which he had noticed earlier, became stronger here. It was a thick, perfume-like scent, like lilies and roses that had been left in a room for too long. It was almost suffocating. Leo covered his nose with his sleeve. He walked carefully because the floor was slippery. Suddenly, the tunnel opened up into a large, round cavern. Leo stopped and gasped. He moved his flashlight around the room. It was not empty. The walls of this cavern were covered in mirrors. Hundreds of them. Some were big, some were small, some were cracked, and some were perfect. But they were not just reflecting the light. They seemed to be vibrating. As Leo stepped into the center of the room, he heard a sound. It was a whisper. "Leo!" He spun around. "Who's there?" he shouted. His voice echoed. "Who's there? Who's there? Who's there?" The echoes bounced off the mirrors. Then the whisper came again, but from a different direction. "Go back." Leo's heart pounded in his chest. Was there someone in the room? He shone the light into the mirrors. He saw his own reflection, but it looked strange. In the reflection, he wasn't holding a flashlight. He was holding the golden gear. But he wasn't holding the gear in reality. It was in the clock tower. This is a very tricky situation. I want to talk about the grammar of perception for a moment. We use verbs like seem, look, and appear when we are not sure about reality. The mirrors seemed to vibrate. The reflection looked strange. These verbs are crucial when you are describing a mystery. You aren't stating a fact. You are stating an impression. As a listener, when you hear "it seemed like," you know that maybe it isn't true. It creates doubt. Now, ask yourself, is the voice real? Or is it a trick of the acoustics in the tunnel? Mrs. Higgins warned him that the tunnels play tricks on the mind. Leo has to remember that warning. Leo closed his eyes. "It's not real," he told himself. "It's just an echo." He took a deep breath and opened his eyes. He focused on the floor, ignoring the mirrors. He saw footprints in the dust. They were old footprints, but they led across the room to a dark archway on the other side. Leo decided to follow the footprints. He walked quickly, trying not to look at his distorted reflections. He felt like the mirrors were watching him. As he reached the archway, the whispering stopped. He stepped through and found himself in another corridor. This one was different. The walls were lined with stone shelves, and on the shelves were glass jars. Leo paused to look at one. Inside the jar, floating in a clear liquid, was a pocket watch. He looked at another jar. Inside was a calendar from the year 1974. He looked at a third jar. Inside was a photograph of a young couple laughing. Leo realized what this place was. It was a library, but not for books. It was a library of moments. Elias Thorne had been collecting time, not just hours and minutes, but memories. Leo felt a sense of sadness. Why would someone lock these things away underground? He continued walking. The sweet smell was very strong now. He saw a light at the end of the corridor. It wasn't the white light of a flashlight. It was a warm, golden glow. He turned off his flashlight and walked towards the glow. He stepped out of the corridor and into a place that should not exist. He was standing in a garden, but it was underground. Above him, the ceiling was high and painted blue to look like the sky, with small crystals that sparkled like stars. In the center of the garden grew a massive tree with silver leaves, and under the tree, sitting on a stone bench, was a man. Leo froze. It was the old man from the town square, the one who had warned him. The old man was holding a watering can, but he wasn't watering plants. He was watering a bed of mechanical flowers made of copper and glass. When he poured water on them, they spun and opened their petals. The old man looked up. He didn't look surprised. "You are persistent, Leo," he said. His voice was calm and deep. Leo walked slowly into the garden. "Who are you?" Leo asked. "And how did you get down here before me?" The old man smiled. "I know the shortcuts," he said. "And as for who I am, surely you have guessed." Leo looked at the silver tree, the mechanical flowers, and the man's blue eyes. "You are Elias Thorne," Leo said. "But that's impossible. You disappeared 50 years ago. You should be much older." The man stood up. He didn't look like he was 100 years old. He looked maybe 70. "Time flows differently here," Elias said. "In this room, a year is just a minute. That is the secret of the clock. It doesn't just measure time, it controls it." Let's take a moment to process this revelation. This is a major plot twist. A plot twist is when the story goes in a direction you did not expect. Elias is alive. He has been hiding underground for 50 years. Now, pay attention to the dialogue. Notice the difference in tone. Leo is confused and asking questions. Elias is calm and giving answers, but his answers are riddles. Time flows differently here. This is a conditional idea. It suggests that the laws of physics are broken in this room. As a listener, you should be asking, is Elias a bad guy? Or is he a protector? He warned Leo to stay away. Usually, antagonists, the bad guys, try to stop the hero. But sometimes mentors, the teachers, also try to stop the hero to protect them. Which one is Elias? Keep an open mind. "Why did you break the clock?" Leo asked. He was angry. "Why did you let the town fall asleep? The people miss the chimes. They miss the life the clock gave them." Elias sighed. He walked over to the silver tree and plucked a silver leaf. "I didn't break it, Leo. I paused it. Do you know why?" Elias looked at Leo intensely. "Because the clock was going too fast. The world was moving too fast. People stopped talking to each other. They stopped looking at the sunset. They were only looking at their watches, rushing, rushing, rushing. I wanted to create a sanctuary, a place where time stands still." Leo looked around the beautiful, silent garden. He understood the temptation. It was peaceful here. No deadlines, no stress, no rushing trains. But then he remembered the town above. He remembered the librarian, Mrs. Higgins, and her hope. He remembered the children playing in the square who had never heard the bell. "But you can't stop time for everyone just because you want to," Leo said firmly. "That's not a gift. That's a prison." Elias's face hardened. "You think you understand," Elias said, "but you are just a mechanic. You fix machines. You don't understand the soul of this machine." Elias reached into his pocket and pulled out a small blue crystal. It was glowing with a pulsing light. "This," Elias said, "is the heart of the clock. Without this, your golden gear is useless. The clock will run for a few hours, and then it will stop forever. Leo recognized the object. It was the regulator, the pendulum weight that kept the rhythm perfect. "Give it to me," Leo said. He stepped forward. Elias stepped back. "No," Elias said. "If you restart the clock fully, this garden will die. The magic will fade. I will become an old man in seconds, and I will turn to dust. Do you want to be a murderer, Leo? This is a moral dilemma. A dilemma is a situation where you have to choose between two difficult options. If Leo fixes the clock, he saves the town's spirit. But he might kill Elias. If he leaves the clock broken, Elias lives. But the town remains asleep and stuck in the past. What would you do? Use your English to formulate an argument in your head. I would fix the clock because, or I would not fix the clock because. Using because helps you practice complex sentences. Connect your opinion to a reason. Leo hesitated. He didn't want to hurt anyone. He looked at the crystal in Elias's hand. He looked at the mechanical flowers. "There must be another way," Leo said. "We can adjust the speed. We don't have to stop it completely. We can make it run slower. We can give people the time they need without freezing the world." Elias looked at the crystal. He seemed to be considering it. "A compromise?" Elias whispered. "I haven't thought of that." Suddenly, the ground shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. The lights in the crystal stars flickered. "What's happening?" Leo shouted. Elias looked terrified. "It's the mechanism upstairs," he cried. "You started it with the golden gear, but without the heart, it is unstable. It is shaking the foundations. If we don't install the heart now, the whole tower will collapse on top of us." The calm atmosphere of the garden vanished. It was replaced by panic. The silver tree began to shake, its leaves falling like rain. "Give me the heart!" Leo yelled. He held out his hand. Elias looked at the crystal, then at the collapsing ceiling, then at Leo. He had to decide in a split second. He threw the blue crystal through the air. "Catch!" he screamed. Leo lunged forward. The crystal spun in the air, glowing bright blue. Leo caught it in both hands. It was cold as ice. "Run!" Elias shouted. "Run back to the tower. I will try to stabilize the garden." Leo didn't want to leave Elias, but the rocks were falling around them. He turned and ran back towards the archway. He sprinted through the corridor of jars. The jars were shaking and falling off the shelves, smashing on the floor. Memories of 1974, pocket watches, photographs, all shattering into pieces. Leo felt a sharp sadness, but he kept running. He ran into the room of mirrors. The floor was cracking. The mirrors were exploding. Crash, smash. Glass flew everywhere. Leo shielded his face with his arm. He couldn't see the path. The reflections were spinning and dizzying. "Focus!" he yelled to himself. "Look at the floor. Follow the footprints." This is an action sequence. The pace of the story is very fast now. Notice the short sentences. Run, catch, crash. Short sentences create speed and urgency. When you are telling an exciting story in English, don't use long, complicated grammar. Use short, punchy verbs. It makes the listener feel the adrenaline. Leo is in danger. He needs to navigate the maze in reverse. Do you remember the fork in the tunnel? He needs to get back there. Leo burst out of the mirror room and into the dark tunnel. He could hear the rumbling of the earth behind him. He reached the fork. The left path was the dry one. The right path was the wet one he had come from. He scrambled up the slippery, wet path. He could see the stone steps ahead. His lungs were burning. He gasped for air. He climbed the stairs. 1, 2, 3. He didn't count this time. He just climbed. He burst through the trap door into the library. Mrs. Higgins was standing there, her eyes wide with terror. "The floor is shaking!" she screamed. "The tower is swaying!" "I have the heart!" Leo shouted, holding up the blue crystal. "I have to get to the top!" He didn't stop to explain. He ran out of the library and into the town square. The scene was chaotic. The pigeons were flying in circles. The townspeople were running away from the tower. The giant clock face was vibrating. The hands were spinning wildly. Forward, backward, forward again. It looked like the clock was having a seizure. Leo ran to the heavy wooden door of the tower. It was locked. He fumbled for his key. His hands were shaking so much he dropped it. "No!" he cried. He fell to his knees to search for the key in the cobblestones. The rumbling grew louder. A piece of stone fell from the tower and smashed into the ground just a few meters away from him. "Leo!" a voice called out. He looked up. It was Mrs. Higgins. She had followed him. She pointed to a loose brick near the door. "Use the emergency latch, under the brick." Leo scrambled over, pulled the loose brick out, and found a small iron ring. He pulled it. The door clicked open. He pushed it open and ran inside. The noise inside was deafening. The gears were grinding and screeching. It sounded like metal screaming. Leo ran up the spiral staircase. He had to be careful. The stairs were vibrating so violently he almost fell twice. He reached the top mechanism room. The golden gear he had installed earlier was glowing red-hot. It was spinning too fast. The whole machine was about to explode. Leo looked for the place to put the blue crystal. There, right above the golden gear, was a small, claw-like holder. It was empty. Leo stepped forward. The heat was intense. He raised the blue crystal. He had to slot it in perfectly. If he missed, the crystal might shatter in the moving gears. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his hand. He waited for the rhythm. Clack, clack, clack. It was uneven. It was broken. He had to force the rhythm. He shoved the crystal into the holder. Snap. The crystal locked into place. Immediately, a wave of blue light pulsed out from the machine. It hit the red-hot golden gear and cooled it down instantly. The screeching noise stopped. The wild spinning slowed down. The vibration in the floor ceased. The silence returned. But then, a new sound started. A beautiful, melodious sound. Tick-tock, tick-tock. It was perfect. It was steady. Leo collapsed on the floor, panting. He wiped the sweat and dust from his face. He had done it. He had saved the tower. He had saved the town. But then he remembered Elias. He remembered the collapsing garden. He crawled to the window and looked down. The town was safe. But what about the tunnels? He felt a heavy weight in his heart. Had he destroyed the sanctuary? He stood up, his legs shaking, and walked over to the machine. The blue crystal was pulsing gently now, in time with the ticking. But as Leo looked closer, he saw something etched inside the crystal. It was a message. It must have appeared when the crystal was activated. Leo squinted to read the tiny glowing letters inside the glass. It said, "The garden is sealed, but the seed is safe." Leo didn't know what that meant. "The seed," he whispered. He heard footsteps on the stairs. Mrs. Higgins ran into the room. She was out of breath. "You did it!" she cried. "Listen, the bell!" And sure enough, above them, the great iron bell of Oakhaven began to toll. Bong! Bong! It rang 7 times. It was 7 o'clock. The sound washed over the town like a healing wave. People in the square stopped running and looked up, cheering. Mrs. Higgins hugged Leo. "You are a hero," she said. Leo smiled weakly. "I had help," he said. He thought of Elias. He wondered if he would ever see the old man again. He patted his pocket, checking for his tools, and then he felt something hard and round in his pocket. He frowned. He pulled it. It was a silver acorn, a seed made of silver. He stared at it in shock. He hadn't put it there. Elias must have slipped it into his pocket when he bumped into him in the garden, or perhaps when I threw the crystal. The seed is safe. "Mrs. Higgins," Leo said slowly, holding up the silver acorn, "does Oakhaven have any legends about a silver tree?" Mrs. Higgins adjusted her glasses. She looked at the acorn and gasped. "That is the founder's seed," she whispered. "The legend says that Oakhaven was built around a magical tree that controlled the seasons, but it died 1,000 years ago. Where did you get that?" Leo closed his hand around the cold silver seed. The mystery wasn't over. Fixing the clock was just the first step. Now, he had the seed of time itself in his pocket. "I think," Leo said, looking out the window at the setting sun, "I think we have some gardening to do." But just as he said that, the heavy iron door of the clock room slammed shut. Boom! Leo and Mrs. Higgins jumped. They spun around. The door was closed, and there was no handle on the inside. They were trapped. A crackly voice came over a hidden speaker in the wall. It wasn't Elias. It was a voice Leo had never heard before. It was cold, metallic, and very formal. "Thank you for stabilizing the energy source," the voice said. "Phase 1 is complete. Now initiating Phase 2, extraction." Leo looked at Mrs. Higgins. "Who is that?" he asked. Mrs. Higgins looked pale. "I don't know," she whispered, "but the mayor always wanted the clock fixed. He said it was for the festival. But maybe—" She trailed off. Leo realized he had been played. Someone else wanted the clock working, and it wasn't for the town. It was for the power inside it. The blue crystal pulsed brighter, but this time the light turned from blue to an angry purple. "What is happening?" Mrs. Higgins cried. The floor began to hum again, but this was a different frequency. It was a high-pitched whine that hurt their ears. Leo banged on the door. "Let us out!" he shouted. The voice came back. "Please remain calm. Transport will arrive shortly." Transport? To where? Leo ran to the window. He looked down at the square. A black van had pulled up to the tower. Men in dark suits were getting out. They were wearing sunglasses, even though it was evening. Leo gripped his screwdriver. He gripped the silver acorn. He looked at Mrs. Higgins. "We need to get out of here," he said. "Now." He looked at the giant face of the clock. The glass was thick, but maybe, just maybe, they could climb out onto the hands of the clock. It was madness. It was dangerous. But staying in the room meant being captured by the extraction team. "Mrs. Higgins," Leo said, pointing to the clock face. "Do you trust me?" Mrs. Higgins looked at the sheer drop, then at the locked door, then at Leo. She took a deep breath and nodded. "I trust you, Leo." Leo pushed against the thick glass of the clock face. It was heavy, but there was a small service latch at the bottom, used for cleaning the glass. He unhooked it. The glass swung open just a few inches. The wind from outside howled into the room. It was strong and cold. "We have to squeeze through," Leo shouted over the wind. Mrs. Higgins looked terrified. She was an old woman, a librarian, not an action hero. But she nodded bravely. "You go first," she said. Leo squeezed his body through the narrow gap. He found a small metal ledge on the outside of the tower. It was only as wide as his foot. He stood there, holding onto the frame of the clock, looking down. The town square was far below. The people looked like tiny ants. The black van was still there, and the men in suits were moving toward the tower entrance. Leo reached his hand back inside. "Come on, Mrs. Higgins. Give me your hand." Mrs. Higgins climbed through. She was shaking. Leo grabbed her arm tightly. "Don't look down," he commanded. "Look at the wall. Just look at the stone." This is a good phrase to remember. Don't look down. We use the imperative form, the command form, in emergencies. It is short and direct. Leo guided her along the narrow ledge. They had to move sideways, inch by inch, like crabs. The wind pulled at their clothes. Above them, the giant, minute hand of the clock was slowly moving down. It was huge, made of heavy iron. It was coming closer to them. If it hit them, it would knock them off the ledge. "We have to hurry," Leo said. "The hand is coming." They shuffled faster. They reached the corner of the tower. Around the corner, Leo saw what he was looking for: a drain pipe. It was an old, rusty pipe that went all the way down to the roof of the library. "We have to slide down," Leo said. He tested the pipe. It rattled, but it felt secure. "I will go first to catch you," he said. Leo wrapped his legs around the pipe and slid down. The metal was cold and rough against his hands. He landed on the flat roof of the library with a thud. He looked up. Mrs. Higgins was hesitating. "Jump!" he whispered loudly. She closed her eyes and slid down. She landed awkwardly, but Leo caught her. They were safe on the roof, but they were not on the ground yet. Suddenly, a loud crash came from the tower room above them. The men in suits had broken down the door. Leo saw flashlight beams cutting through the darkness, searching the ledge where they had just been. "They know we are gone," Leo said. "We need to get to the street." They found a fire escape ladder on the side of the library and climbed down to the dark alleyway behind the building. They paused to catch their breath. They were hidden in the shadows, surrounded by trash cans and old boxes. "Let's take a quick pause here. I want to ask you a question about motivation. Why are the men chasing them?" The metallic voice said, "Extraction." This implies they want to take something. Do they want the clock? No, the clock is too big. They want the energy source. They want the blue crystal. And they probably want the silver seed that is in Leo's pocket. In English stories, understanding the villain's goal helps you predict the ending. If the villain wants power, the hero usually has to destroy the power or hide it. Keep this in mind. Leo has the seed. What should he do with it? "Where do we go?" Mrs. Higgins whispered. Her face was pale in the moonlight. Leo touched the silver acorn in his pocket. It felt warm now, vibrating with a gentle energy. He remembered the message in the crystal. The garden is sealed, but the seed is safe. "We need to plant it," Leo said. "The old man, Elias, gave me this seed for a reason. If the men take the energy from the clock, the town will die. But if we plant the seed, maybe we can create a new source of energy." Mrs. Higgins's eyes widened. "The old greenhouse," she said. "In the park. That is where the original founder's tree grew 1,000 years ago. The soil there is special." "Lead the way," Leo said. They ran out of the alleyway. The streets were empty now. The townspeople had gone inside, frightened by the noise and the shaking tower. Leo and Mrs. Higgins stuck to the shadows. They ran past the bakery, past the post office, and toward the park at the edge of town. But as they crossed the main street, headlights swept over them. The black van screeched around the corner. "There they are!" a voice shouted. "Run!" Leo yelled. They sprinted toward the park gates. The van roared behind them. The engine sound was getting louder and louder. Leo could hear the tires squealing on the cobblestones. They reached the iron gates of the park. They were closed. "Climb!" Leo shouted. He boosted Mrs. Higgins up. She scrambled over the gate with surprising speed. Adrenaline can make people do amazing things. Leo vaulted over the gate just as the van slammed into the metal bars. Crash! The impact shook the ground. The van was stuck, but the doors opened, and 4 men in black suits jumped out. They started climbing the gate. Leo and Mrs. Higgins ran into the park. It was overgrown and wild. Tall grass whipped at their legs. Branches scratched their faces. In the center of the park stood the ruins of a glass greenhouse. It was just a skeleton of metal beams now, with no glass left. But in the middle of the ruin, there was a patch of dark, rich earth. "There," Mrs. Higgins pointed. "That is the spot." They ran into the center of the ruins. Leo fell to his knees. He dug into the dirt with his bare hands. The ground was hard. "Hurry, Leo!" Mrs. Higgins cried. She was looking back at the park entrance. The men in suits were running across the grass. They were fast. They were holding strange devices that glowed with purple light. "Hand over the artifact!" one of the men shouted. His voice was amplified, booming through the quiet park. "You cannot stop progress." This is a classic conflict. Progress versus tradition. The men think stealing the energy is progress. Leo and Mrs. Higgins represent tradition and nature. Listen to the words I am using to describe the men. Strange devices, purple light, amplified voice. These words feel unnatural, artificial. In contrast, Leo is using his bare hands to dig in the dark earth. This contrast in vocabulary highlights the theme of the story. Nature versus machine. Pay attention to these themes. They help you understand the deeper meaning of the story, which is a B2 level skill that we are practicing today. Leo dug faster. His fingernails broke, but he didn't care. He made a small hole. He pulled the silver acorn out of his pocket. It was glowing brightly now, a pure white light that illuminated the dark ruins. "Give it to us," the man in the suit yelled. He was only 10 meters away. He raised his purple device. It made a high-pitched whining sound like a weapon charging up. Leo dropped the seed into the hole. He didn't have time to cover it gently. He slammed the dirt back over it with his palms. "Grow!" he screamed. "Please, grow!" For a second, nothing happened. The man in the suit laughed, a cold, cruel laugh. "It's just a seed, boy. It takes years to grow." He aimed his device at Leo. "Now, step away." Leo closed his eyes. He felt defeated. He had failed. But then he felt a tremor in the ground. It wasn't the shaking of an earthquake this time. It was different. It was a surge of life. A green shoot burst out of the ground between Leo's fingers. It grew incredibly fast. In 1 second, it was as tall as his hand. In 2 seconds, it was as tall as his knees. In 3 seconds, it was a sapling tree, pushing Leo backward. "What is that?" the man in the suit yelled. He fired a beam of purple energy at the tree, but the tree absorbed the energy. The purple light hit the silver bark and turned into golden light. The tree grew taller, thicker, wider. Branches shot out like rockets. Leaves unfurled, silver leaves that chimed like tiny bells in the wind. The tree was growing decades in seconds. It smashed through the rusted metal roof of the greenhouse ruins. It towered over the park. The roots of the tree snaked across the ground. They moved like giant pythons. The men in suits tried to run, but the roots were faster. The roots wrapped around their ankles and lifted them into the air. The men dropped their devices. They dangled upside down, shouting in panic. But the tree didn't hurt them. It just held them, suspending them so they couldn't cause any more harm. Leo and Mrs. Higgins stood under the magnificent silver canopy. The light from the leaves was soft and warm. It lit up the whole park. The air smelled of rain and fresh pine, just like when Leo first arrived in Oakhaven, but 100 times stronger. The purple light from the clock tower in the distance faded away. The angry humming noise stopped. The town was silent again, but it was a peaceful silence. Leo looked at Mrs. Higgins. She was crying, but she was smiling. "The guardian has returned," she whispered. She touched the trunk of the silver tree. Elias was right. The seed was safe. Let's analyze the resolution here. The climax happened very quickly. This is common in adventure stories. The tension builds and builds, and then the release is sudden. The tree growing is the release of tension. Notice how the weapon of the enemy, the purple energy, actually helped the tree grow. This is poetic justice. The bad guys defeated themselves. Now, we are in the falling action part of the story. The danger is gone. The adrenaline is fading. The characters can breathe. And so can you. Take a deep breath. Relax your shoulders. You have done the hard work of listening to the fast part. Now, let's enjoy the ending. The next morning, the sun rose over Oakhaven, but the town looked different. The gray, sleepy atmosphere was gone. The town was full of color. Flowers were blooming in window boxes that had been empty yesterday. The people were out in the streets, talking, laughing, and looking at the giant silver tree in the park. The police had arrived and taken the men in suits away. It turned out they were from a corrupt energy company that had been stealing power from ancient sites all over the country. Their van was towed away, and peace returned to the village. Leo packed his bag in his room at the inn. He looked at his tools. He looked at the heavy iron key to the clock tower. He didn't need it anymore. The clock was running perfectly, powered now by the connection to the silver tree. He walked downstairs. Mrs. Higgins was waiting for him in the lobby. She was holding a small box. "You are leaving?" she asked. Leo nodded. "My job is done. The clock is fixed. The town is safe." Mrs. Higgins handed him the box. "A gift," she said, "from the town, and from Elias." Leo opened the box. Inside was a pocket watch. But it wasn't an ordinary watch. The face was made of silver, and instead of numbers, it had tiny drawings of leaves. And on the back, it was engraved, "To Leo, the guardian of the seed." "Thank you," Leo said. He felt a lump in his throat. He had come here just to fix a machine, but he had found so much more. He had found magic, he had found courage, and he had found a friend. "Will Elias ever come back?" Leo asked. Mrs. Higgins looked toward the park. "I don't know," she said. "But I think, as long as the tree is here, he is here too." Leo walked to the train station. The train was already waiting. He stepped onto the platform. He looked back at Oakhaven one last time. He saw the clock tower standing tall and proud. The hands showed the correct time. 10 o'clock. And then the bell rang. Bong. Bong! It was a deep, rich sound that seemed to say goodbye. Leo smiled. He stepped onto the train. As the train pulled away, Moving through the green countryside, Leo took out the silver pocket watch. He held it to his ear. Tick-tock, tick-tock. It beat with the same rhythm as the heartbeat he had heard under the floor. It was the rhythm of life. And that, my friends, is the end of our story. Leo's journey in Oakhaven is over, but his life as a guardian has just begun. Who knows where he will go next? Maybe to a lighthouse that doesn't shine, or a bridge that sings in the wind. The world is full of mysteries, waiting for someone who knows how to listen. Now, before we finish this episode, I want to do a final review with you. We have covered a huge amount of material today. Think back to the beginning. We started with a simple train ride. We practiced visualization. Then we went into the clock tower and practiced predicting. We went underground and practiced filtering out distractions and identifying plot twists. And finally, we practiced following fast-paced action and understanding themes and motivations. This structure, start, middle, end, is not just for stories. It is for your study sessions too. When you sit down to learn English, you should have a warm-up, like the train ride, a challenge, like the tunnels, and a cool-down, like the planting of the tree. Don't just jump into hard grammar immediately. Ease into it. Let your brain wake up. I also want to talk about engagement. The title of this video is Stay Engaged While Listening. How did we do that? We did it by making you an active participant. I asked you questions. I asked you to predict. I asked you to imagine. You weren't just receiving information. You were processing it. This is the secret to B1 and B2 listening. Stop treating English like a radio playing in the background. Treat it like a puzzle you have to solve. When you listen to the news, ask yourself, why is the reporter using that word? What will the politician say next? When you watch a movie, ask, how does this character feel? Turn your brain on. Let's do one final exercise. I want you to summarize the story of Oakhaven in 3 sentences. Yes, just 3 sentences. This forces you to find the most important points. Take a second. Think about it. Here is my summary. Sentence 1. Leo, a restorer, went to Oakhaven to fix a magical clock and discovered a secret journal. Sentence 2. He explored underground tunnels where he met the timekeeper Elias and found a magical seed, while bad men tried to steal the energy. Sentence 3. Leo escaped the men and planted the seed, which grew into a giant silver tree that saved the town and restored the magic. Did your summary look like mine? It's okay if it was different. The important thing is that you tried to synthesize the information. Synthesis is taking many small parts and making one big whole. That is the ultimate goal of fluency. I hope you enjoyed this mystery. Stories like this are powerful because they give context to vocabulary. You will never forget the word gear because you visualize the golden gear. You won't forget tunnel or seed or clock face because they are part of a memory now, not just a list in a textbook. Thank you so much for listening to English in Fluency. I am Alex, and it has been a pleasure to be your guide through the mystery of Oakhaven Clock Tower. If you enjoyed this long-form story, please let me know. We can create more adventures, more mysteries, and more opportunities for you to master this beautiful language. Remember, fluency is a journey, not a destination. It's like the clock. It keeps ticking, keep moving, and every second counts. Keep listening, stay curious, and I will see you in the next episode. Goodbye.